George A. Romero, good morning, sir.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good,
Doing
man.
well. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
George,
happy to be here.
I got to take a picture of Nine's face here because it is like he just walked down the stairwell and saw Santa Claus putting presents under the tree.
Well, so much of my warped mindset, I credit to the scathing social commentary that is George Romero zombie films.
You're the godfather.
Well, I guess maybe, it's unwitting. When I made the first film, I didn't even call them zombies, I guess I maybe started something new. I made them the neighbors instead of these mysterious voodoo guys in Haiti. But that's the new zombies, right? The neighbors. And the neighbors are scary enough when they're alive. They're a little scarier when they're dead.
Yeah, really. It seems like you pioneered a movement because we know what the vampire craze is now. It seems like there's a zombie craze. It's all the rage now.
Coming back.
Yeah?
Yeah, there is. I think it's video games more than films. There's really only been one film, and that was last year, that really blew the roof off at the box office. That was Zombieland, which, is just sort of a hilarious send-up. But they're not dead in Zombieland, so I can forgive the idea that they run. My guys don't run. They're dead, and they're stiff, and they don't run.
So, George Romero, did you coin the phrase zombie? I don't know its origin. Are you the guy that came up with that word?
No. It's an old voodoo tradition.
Okay.
There's actually quite a good book called The Serpent and the Rainbow about the actual creation of zombies in Haiti. I mean, these voodoo priests used to mix up some kind of a cocktail from dried blowfish that sort of put people in a state of near suspended animation and made them subservient, and that's where the word came from.
So do you believe in zombies?
I believe in those zombies. There's enough documentation about that.
But they didn't eat people.
I have seen a few people on the street that look dead.
Oh, you should see me driving to work at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Ridiculous. So, of all the zombie films that have come along over the years, I guess you've definitely inspired most of them, even if people don't say that. And how do you feel about your impact on all the dozens and dozens of zombie films that have come out over the last 40-odd years?
Well, my films are my films. I think they're a little different. They have a fair amount of gore, and I guess I'm known for that. But they also, as you mentioned, have. I try to make them sort of socio-political satires. So I think that my films are maybe a little different than some of the other ones, but I certainly don't mind. I mean, there was that whole wave of Italian films that came out, and then, of course, the Michael Jackson Thriller thing.
Oh, yeah.
What's the attraction with the Italians and zombies? Because so many Italian zombie films.
Well, when I made Dawn of the Dead, which was the second film that I made, it was financed by an Italian company headed by an Italian director named Dario Argento, who's famous for a lot of films, Suspiria, Deep Red, a lot of fantasy horror stuff. And so the film just really went through the roof in Italy because Dario's name was attached to it. And I guess there were just a lot of imitators.
Yeah. George, what are your thoughts on shooting in 3D? Because it seems now people are putting out movies in 3D.
Everything.
As soon as people hear it's in 3D, it kind of, puts the movie in a shadow, and 3D is all you hear about.
I don't know if it's going to last. I was around, man. I mean, I'm old enough that I was the first kid in the theater when Buona Devil opened. That was the first wave of. I remember movies that were 3D that people don't even realize were in 3D. Dial M for Murder.
Really?
DOA. Brando made a movie about Napoleon called Desiree, and that was in 3D. And it just went away. People just didn't like the idea of wearing the glasses. I mean, I went to see Avatar, and I saw people taking the glasses off and watching the double image because they were getting headaches. So I don't know if it's going to last.
Now, George, we're going to get to what you're promoting in just a second, but the question I got for you, I saw that movie, The Crazies, but now the original one came out in the 70s. Did you have a hand in the one that just came out this year?
No, I didn't, not creatively at all. They paid me a fee, basically, to
Be a consultant?
Be an executive producer, which means you stay home and we'll show you the movie when it's done.
I got you.
Pretty sweet, man.
So I didn't have a hand in it creatively.
So I
think Breck did a really good job with it. It's a pretty scary movie. It's again, it's not. Mine was much more political than this one was. This was more like 28 Days Later or something. It was like a virus, and the crazy people were, they actually looked like zombies to me. But,
yeah.
It was a good film, though.
Yeah, it was.
Speaking of zombies and new movies, why don't you tell us a little bit about Survival of the Dead, George Romero?
Well, the last one that I made prior to this was called Diary of the Dead, and I wanted to do something about emerging media, citizen journalism, and so forth. So I went back to the very first night when the zombies first start to come back to life. And it's about a bunch of kids that are shooting a school film, a college film.
Yeah.
And they start to document what's happening with the zombies. I made that film on a very low budget in order to get creative control. And because it was so inexpensive to make, it wound up making a lot of money. And so everybody said, well, let's do it again. And so that's where Survival of the Dead comes from. It takes a minor character from Diary and follows him off on his own adventure. He's a AWOL National Guardsman with 3 of his buddies, and they take off from the mainland, go to a little island, thinking it will be safer. The problem is that there's almost a shooting war on the island because there are these 2 feuding families that have been shooting at each other since the cradle, and so they become the humans on the island become more dangerous than the zombies. The zombies are almost like mosquitoes.
George, when people hear your name, George A. Romero, and then people hear like Stephen King, people always say about Stephen King, wow, he writes all these, crazy, weird, shocking movies. That guy has to have horrible nightmares. He's got to be something's going on in his head. Do you have nightmares, or what do you say to people who say, if I write a movie like this, I'm crazy?
What Stephen says, and I'll quote him and say the same thing. I don't have nightmares because I give them all to you.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's a good point.
But do you remember your nightmares? In other words, do you ever have a dream that inspires one of these movies?
No.
Okay.
No. The ideas for these films have all come from what's happening in the world, out in the real world.
Yeah.
So no, I haven't. I've never tried. I'm actually writing a script right now, which is a little touches on that a little bit, but none of the stuff that I've done so far has come from dreams.
I got you.
Well, Survival of the Dead out on DVD today, I believe.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
anything in the future? Will there be more zombie films, George Romero?
Well, it depends very much on how this film performs financially. So I'm ready to do one. I love doing these things, and anybody that watches this film, just remember to get a chuckle out of it. I mean, I threw some real Looney Tunes kind of humor into this film, and sometimes I think people are afraid to laugh when they go to a horror film. But
Yeah, you have to.
that's part of the fun of it for me.
Well, it is a pleasure. George A. Romero, thanks for being on the Rise Guys this morning.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
All right, have a good morning.
Thanks, George.